Hi all, Rick here, peering into the fabric of a fictional reality to discern just what the hell is happening. Star Trek Technobabble is famous for sidestepping and skirting the finer points of its science and pseudoscience in order to focus more on constructing a story. This is fine, but sometimes it's fun to try to peer deeper into these premises and try to figure them out. One phenomenon is very familiar to Starfleet, and every interstellar power for that matter. Subspace is utilised almost every time faster than light anything is needed in the Star Trek universe. While a very confusing and expansive topic, Starfleet understands subspace collectively rather well, teaching subspace mechanics as a standard part of starship operation. Despite its frequent use, not much is actually described as to its properties or even what exactly it is, so I thought we could come up with some theorising on trying to unravel its mysteries, akin to the speculation on fluidic and interphasic space I've already done. So, first off, what is it used in? As mentioned, almost every instance where faster than light is required, things often interact with subspace. Looking at how Trek communications work is a fairly straightforward starting point, whether it's from planet-side communicators to ships in orbit or across a quadrant. Subspace provides a rapid, near-instantaneous way to communicate. Once subspace was discovered, pre-warp wavelengths were often disregarded as nobody would be using communications that take 8 minutes to travel from the Sun to Earth. Even subspace communications, however, has its limits. Such correspondences require a network of relays and communication hubs to manage these signals. Areas that lack these sort of refresher setups generally will be much harder to contact with subspace signals, showing that such messages do have a range. This could be seen most in the series Voyager, where the ship was a galaxy's length away in completely uncharted space. There were no Starfleet setups to enable them to send a powerful enough message across the quadrants. However, when they managed to commandeer a Hirogen subspace relay network, they were able to establish limited contact with the Federation. So, while waves can travel further and faster through subspace than regular space, they still have a limit. After this, the Pathfinder project was established to communicate more frequently with one of the most powerful arrays and the help of a Class B pulsar. The Mutara Interdimensional Deep Space Array system actually used a form of hyper-subspace to complete this amazing feat. Signals through hyper-subspace in fact moved faster than the maximum warp speeds, and this is partly as it was able to produce a micro-wormhole through which a signal was sent. However, over such great distances, the latency was huge and real-time communication was a further struggle still, until they brought black holes into the equation. So, already we know it's a realm of sorts where regular physics doesn't apply as it should, and electromagnetic waves are not limited to the speed of light. What gets strange, however, is subspace involvement in warp drives. When a warp drive is engaged, no matter what its power source, a warp field is generated which distorts spacetime. However, it is classified as a type of subspace deformation too, not only bending space-time, but exerting an effect in subspace too. Other warps in the fabric of the universe can be categorised as subspace deformations, whether or not they move at warp speeds. These deformations, including the artificial warp fields, are measured in Cochranes, named after the inventor of the human warp drive, Zephram Cochrane, who was likely one of the first individuals to truly grasp subspace mechanics. Ships that are travelling at or have recently passed through at warp speeds leave such distortions in their wake, making for a way to track such vessels when combined with the ship's ion trail. Even cloaked vessels, when moving at FTL, have difficulty masking their subspace presence, and more than one stalking warbird or Klingon vessel has tipped its presence to an observant enemy, although such detection is unlikely to result in the direct location of the cloaked vessel. Some vessels, such as the Zindi's craft, were capable of forming a tunnel through subspace, known as vortices. Such travel was even harder to detect than conventional warp drive, as the ship was practically immersed in subspace at this stage. We even have the existence of subspace pockets, such as the tertiary subspace manifold that contained the Solanogen-based lifeforms that abducted members of the Enterprise D in 2369. These beings were sentient and seemingly native to subspace, opening rifts into our plane of existence after detecting sensor sweeps from a warp-powered array that LaForge was experimenting with. They were freely able to transfer people and objects from current space-time to their subspace realm with no ill effects. The ill effects came afterwards, when they replaced all of your blood with plastic or sawed your arm off and stuck it back on. So, on top of subspace's faster-than-light properties, it very much is another realm into which matter can pass, like another dimension or alternate universe, but no such actual dimensional hopping is undertaken. In fact, from how subspace is described, and even named, it seems to be a layer of our universe itself, and all others, always present but apart from the perceived dimensions. It's described as also consisting of an infinite number of domains, and Geordi LaForge described it as a honeycomb of such pockets. These would be the subspace layers. So it's not another universe and not quite another dimension. It's more like hidden levels of this one that we cannot perceive, like the quantum level of existence. I like to think of it this way. You have Universe 1, that's normal Trek, and Universe 2 can be any of them. Let's go with the mirror universe. When you hop dimensions, you pass through an interface from 1 to 2, right? But in between 1 and 2, there's infinity of a sort. 1.1, 1.2, 1.21, 1.211 recurring forever. An infinite band of layers, but also not. Ships at warp not only form a subspace bubble and trail through it like water, subspace can exert a stress on a travelling ship, and is one of the limiting factors in warp speeds. Just as matter can affect subspace, we see that the inverse is true too. There are even particles of matter found only in subspace that can be utilised in normal space. Tetryon particles, for example, are formed in subspace but can be harnessed for short times for a variety of purposes. This drag may be caused by such particles present in subspace or some other property of the realm itself. In beta canon, countering such drag is the explanation given to the sleeker profiles of newer Federation vessels. It's all about that warp dynamics. Occasionally, what's called an interfold layer can form, which is kinda like when you get air trapped beneath wallpaper, whereas subspace and space are meant to be adjacent, in a metaphysical level. An interfold layer can pop into existence in between, which causes all sorts of spatial distortions and dangerous astral eddies. Repeated flexing and intense bending of space-time can result in damage to this layer of separation, and when this occurs, ruptures, sinkholes and tears can breach the dividing veil and create areas where the two realms bleed into one another. It was discovered in 2370 that warp drive could cause such issues over prolonged periods, and that a radical re-engineering of such drives would be needed to avoid further damage. Such apertures into subspace often exhibited strong gravitational and temporal effects, as they too warped space. What is also apparent is that when subspace is twisted in such a fashion, it makes navigation at warp a hazard and can cause interference in communications running through subspace. And then there's the Omega molecule. Omega molecules, when destabilized, not only detonate, they destroy subspace itself. In such sectors of damaged space, warp drives become impossible and subspace communications cannot pass, as there is no longer a faster-than-light medium for things to pass through. All of this proves that subspace is an integral part of warp travel, and in some way a warp engine interacts with this realm directly. However, a ship travelling at warp does not enter completely into subspace, as it still maintains a physical presence in the universe and can hit and be hit in return. Otherwise, ships wouldn't need a deflector array to push aside space debris when travelling at warp speeds. Subspace are the layers of the perceived universe that remain hidden, the infinite lodestones that prop up spacetime. Manipulating that scaffolding lets you bend space for warp travel, or send communications faster than light. In areas where subspace is damaged or absent, space-time is inert and faster than light impossible. One theory I came across while researching this explained FTL technology in Star Trek as not the manipulation of space-time directly, but the control over its foundations. Subspace is linked to regular space and is much easier to manipulate, as it does not adhere to the same laws of physics. Therefore, when you activate a warp drive, it bends subspace, which in turn forces regular space-time to conform to the warp bubble effect, and away you go. So thank you to coder and writer Brent Royal Gordon for making me think about it from that angle. Another intriguing idea pops up when you look at a variety of subspace phenomena. Most subspace layers are generally habitable, for at least a time, providing there's an appropriate environment as seen by ships that have been pulled into subspace. But also, there are layers where thought alone begins to shape reality, such as when Beverly Crusher was trapped in a collapsing warp bubble, and the entire contents of this micro-reality had been created from her thoughts and memories at the moment she was trapped. On top of this, there was the Nacine entity known as Suspiria, which originated from the subspace realm she called Exosia, a realm described by the Okampa as a place of pure thought, pure energy, a place of the mind. Realms where simple thought has dominance have been encountered before, such as when the USS Enterprise D was accelerated well beyond the M33 galaxy and into an area Data suspected is at the edge of the universe as we know it. In this strange existence, thoughts are given life. So my theory is that subspace is effectively what existed before the known universe and its physical laws came to be. In a way, it is what our universe is expanding into, what persisted before the Big Bang, a realm where thought and energy shaped reality. This sort of approach ties into things like the Traveller's mysterious abilities, and maybe even stranger beings. Hell, in Star Trek lore, people suggest Omega molecules as the origin for the Big Bang, which could help with why this mystical thought space is being pushed back as Omega destroys it, replacing it with normal spacetime. Further Omega explosions in normal spacetime is a double dose that completely removes all traces of subspace and binding the universe to a relativistic rule set. Frankly speaking, every fictional universe has its one technology to hand-wave away a lot of unknown advancements, and for Star Trek, more so than warp drive or transporters, I think it's the idea of subspace. The closest comparison I can think of in real life is quantum mechanics mixed with a bit of alternate dimensions, but subspace is neither of these, but the concept is a hybrid of both. So there we go. Star Trek does draw on real scientific principles whenever it likes to create and play with cool ideas, but when it comes to faster than light travel, they went their own way and created subspace. Because of this, we only ever get vagaries and technobabble when describing subspace, which brings me full circle, in that it's very well understood by Starfleet, and that's all you need to know. Thanks for watching this video on subspace. I've been Rick, and until next time, goodbye.